Hello there, and welcome to 100 Facts to Drift. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Maybe it's been a long day, or maybe you're someone who drifts to sleep, thinking about gardens, petals, and the quiet mysteries hidden within every bloom instead of counting sheep. Either way, this journey is for you. There's nothing you need to do now, nothing to accomplish, no goals to chase, no questions that must be answered by morning. Simply let your body find comfort wherever you are. Let your breath slow, soft, and steady, as if you're breathing in the gentle fragrance of a field in full bloom. Let your shoulders relax, your jaw unclench, and imagine your thoughts becoming lighter with each exhale, like petals drifting on a soft breeze. Tonight, we're embarking on a slow and peaceful exploration through one of Earth's most beautiful creations, flowers. These aren't just decorations or splashes of color in a garden. They're living stories, carrying secrets older than civilizations, speaking languages we're only now beginning to understand. They've inspired poets, healed wounds, shaped history, and painted the world in impossible hues. Over the next 2 hours or so, we'll wander gently through 100 remarkable facts about flowers, each one a small doorway into a world of wonder. Some facts will surprise you. Others might simply float past your awareness like clouds drifting across a summer sky. Some may spark quiet curiosity, while others will simply become part of the soft haze of rest that's already beginning to settle around you. If this peaceful exploration helps you unwind or gives you a gentle way to end your day, consider liking and subscribing to the channel. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all that matters is this moment. Let's begin this slow, soothing journey through the world of flowers. Section 1. The Ancient Language of Flowers. Fact 1. Flowers as ancient communication. Flowers speak a language, older than words. For thousands of years, humans have used blooms to communicate feelings too delicate for speech. In ancient Egypt, flowers carried meaning in every petal. A red lotus whispered passion, while white blooms suggested purity and rebirth. The Victorians took this silent language to remarkable heights, creating entire dictionaries where each flower's color, number, and arrangement held specific meaning. A single red rose meant deep love. A yellow rose meant friendship. 2 roses twisted together meant engagement. As you rest here, imagine the quiet conversations happening in gardens all around the world, flowers speaking what hearts cannot always say aloud. Fact 2. The oldest known flower. Scientists discovered something extraordinary in 2002. In the mountains of northeast China, they found fossilized remains of a flower so ancient it predates even the flowering plants we see today. This flower, named Archifructus sinensis, bloomed approximately 125 million years ago, long before birds filled the sky, long before most modern creatures walked the earth. It resembled a water lily, small and unassuming, yet it was revolutionary. This ancient bloom opened the door to all flowering plants that exist today. Every rose, every daisy, every orchid, in every garden across the world traces its lineage back to this quiet ancestor sleeping in stone for millions of years. Fact 3. The evolution of petals. Early flowering plants didn't have the large, colorful petals we admire today. Instead, they developed petals gradually over millions of years, as they evolved alongside the insects and animals that pollinated them. Petals became a form of attraction, a silent advertisement calling out to bees, butterflies, and birds. Bright colors evolved in response to what pollinating creatures could see. Some flowers developed ultraviolet patterns invisible to human eyes but perfectly visible to bees, like landing strips guiding them toward nectar. This slow dance of coevolution, flowers changing to attract their pollinators, pollinators changing to seek out flowers, created the breathtaking diversity we see in gardens today. Fact 4. Over 352,000 species of flowering plants. The sheer abundance is almost incomprehensible. Scientists have identified more than 352,000 species of flowering plants currently known to science, and more are discovered every year. This incredible diversity means that on almost every continent, in almost every climate and condition, from scorching deserts to frozen tundras, from tropical rainforests to high mountain peaks, flowers have found a way to bloom. Each species is a solution, a perfect answer to its particular environment. Each one is a small miracle of adaptation and resilience. Somewhere tonight, in the darkness, flowers are growing that you'll never see, in colors you've never imagined, releasing scents that drift through air you'll never breathe. Fact 5. Flowers bloom at different times of day. Some flowers are sleepers, opening only under the cover of darkness. Moonflowers, for instance, bloom only at night, closing their petals during the day as if they belong to a different world than ours. Other flowers follow the sun throughout the day, a behavior called heliotropism. Sunflowers turn their faces from east to west, tracking the sun's movement across the sky like devoted followers. Then there are flowers that bloom only in specific hours. Some at dawn, some at dusk, some only during certain seasons when conditions are perfectly aligned. Each flower knows its moment, knows precisely when to open and when to rest. As you drift towards sleep, imagine flowers everywhere, slowly closing their petals, settling into their own rest, just as you're settling into yours. Fact 6. The hidden symbolism in flower language. The language of flowers goes even deeper than color. In Victorian times, the way you gave a flower mattered. A flower presented in your right hand meant yes, acceptance, a promise. The same flower in your left hand meant no, rejection. The number of flowers in a bouquet carried meaning. A single flower conveyed devotion. 12 roses, a dozen, meant be mine. 7 flowers signified admiration. Even the way you arranged them spoke volumes. Flowers tied upside down were a message of good luck. Flowers given open meant gratitude. Buds unopened were a sign of caution. This coded language let people express what society often forbade them to say openly, turning gardens into libraries of secret meanings. Fact 7. Sacred flowers in ancient civilizations. The lotus was sacred to ancient Egyptians, appearing in art, jewelry, and burial rituals for thousands of years. Egyptians saw the lotus as a symbol of resurrection and eternal life because it bloomed in rivers and wetlands, sometimes lying dormant for years during drought, only to rise again magnificently when water returned. This flower whispered to them of death and rebirth, of cycles turning, of hope that persists through barren seasons. The lotus represented beauty emerging from mud, purity arising from murky water. In tombs and temples across Egypt, lotus flowers were painted, carved, and woven into the fabric of spiritual life, carrying the hopes of an entire civilization toward eternal rest. Fact 8. Roses and their royal connection. Roses are related to apples, raspberries, cherries, peaches, plums, nectarines, pears, and almonds. They share a botanical family, each one expressing its relationship in different ways, through color in the rose, through nourishment in the apple, through flavor in the plum. This hidden kinship reminds us that nature groups things not by appearance, but by deeper truths. Roses themselves have been cultivated by humans for over 5,000 years, making them one of the longest-loved flowers in human history. Ancient Romans used rose petals to perfume their palaces and streets. Medieval nobles planted roses in their castles. Across centuries and continents, the rose has remained humanity's flower of choice, its petals whispering of beauty, love, and devotion. Fact 9. Tulips worth more than gold. In Holland during the 1600s, something extraordinary happened. Tulip bulbs became more valuable than gold itself. This period, known as tulip mania, saw wealthy merchants and traders paying astronomical sums for bulbs, especially those with rare striped or flamed patterns. Some bulbs traded hands for the price of estates. People traded property, houses, even their fortunes for the promise of a single perfect bloom. The madness swept through Holland like fever, until the market suddenly collapsed and fortunes vanished. Yet the passion behind it speaks to something deeply human. Our willingness to treasure beauty, to value the ephemeral, to find profound worth in something as fragile and temporary as a flower. Fact 10. The ghost orchid. In the humid depths of Florida and the Caribbean, there exists a flower so rare and elusive it seems almost mythical. The ghost orchid has no leaves, no green surfaces to catch sunlight and make energy through photosynthesis. Instead, it appears almost translucent, pale white, and delicate, emerging from the dark forest floor like a specter. Scientists still don't fully understand how it survives. Some believe it exists in symbiosis with a fungus that provides what leaves cannot. Others suggest it lives off the decay of organic matter around it. The ghost orchid appears in forests where few have ventured, blooming for brief moments before vanishing back into shadow. It remains one of nature's greatest mysteries. a flower that seems to belong more to dreams than to the waking world. Fact 11. Saffron and the crocus. One of the world's most expensive spices comes from a tiny flower. Saffron, worth more per ounce than gold, comes from the stigma, the delicate female reproductive part of the Crocus sativus flower. Each flower produces only 3 tiny stigmas, and these must be harvested by hand. It takes approximately 150 flowers to produce 1 gram of saffron. This labor-intensive process, combined with the flower's limited growing regions, has made saffron precious for thousands of years. Ancient rulers paid armies with saffron. It's been used in medicine, cooking, and religious ceremonies across cultures for millennia. All this value, all this history, hidden in the delicate strands of one small purple flower. Fact 12. Chrysanthemums and cultural meaning. In many Asian cultures, chrysanthemums carry deep significance. In Japan, the chrysanthemum represents the imperial family and is a symbol of the nation itself. Yet in Malta and some European cultures, chrysanthemums are associated with death and funerals, considered unlucky. The same flower, beautiful, complex, golden, or white, carries opposite meanings depending on who beholds it. This teaches us something profound about flowers themselves. They don't inherently mean anything. We give them meaning. We project our hopes, fears, histories, and beliefs onto their petals. The flower simply blooms, indifferent to our interpretations, beautiful regardless of what we think it represents. Fact 13. Dandelions as food and medicine. Dandelions might seem like weeds, nuisances in an otherwise perfect lawn, yet every part of this flower is edible and nutritious. The flowers themselves can be eaten raw or cooked. The leaves are packed with vitamins A and C, iron, calcium, and potassium. 1 cup of dandelion greens provides between 7,000 and 13,000 international units of vitamin A. The roots have been used medicinally for centuries, brewed into tea to support digestion and liver health. In some cultures, dandelion wine is a treasured tradition. What we call a weed is, from another perspective, a gift, a free source of nutrition and healing available in almost every meadow and lawn across the temperate world. Fact 14. Bluebells and ancient glue. In ancient times before modern adhesives, people found creative solutions. The juice from bluebell flowers was discovered to make a strong, natural glue. Medieval bookbinders used this flower-based adhesive to bind manuscripts and texts that still survive today. Imagine, books that have lasted centuries, holding their pages together with nothing but the juice of delicate blue flowers. This connection between blooms and preservation, between nature and human craftsmanship, speaks to a time when humans lived more closely with the plant world, when we knew intimately what each flower could do, what gifts it held beyond mere beauty. Fact 15. The thistle and Scottish pride. Centuries ago, when Vikings invaded Scotland, something unexpected happened. Armies attempting to cross the land found themselves slowed and injured by vast patches of wild thistle. The sharp, prickly plants covered the ground, making passage painful and difficult. This slowing gave the Scots precious time to escape and prepare their defenses. Because of this moment, this crisis averted by a humble flowering plant, the wild thistle became Scotland's national flower. A flower chosen not for fragrance or beauty, but for its fierce protective nature, for its ability to defend and preserve. The thistle reminds us that flowers need not be gentle to be valuable, that strength and protection can come in surprising forms. Flowers in color and light. Fact 1631. Fact 16. The world's largest flower. The largest individual flower on Earth is the Rafflesia, specifically Rafflesia arnoldii. This massive bloom can grow to 3.5 feet in diameter and weigh up to 24 pounds. Imagine a flower the size of a large patio decoration, a bloom so enormous you could walk around inside it. The Rafflesia grows in the rainforests of Southeast Asia and is quite rare. It has no leaves, no roots, no way to make its own food through photosynthesis. Instead, it's a parasite, drawing all its energy from the vines it grows upon. Despite, or perhaps because of its strange nature, the Rafflesia is considered one of the most remarkable flowers in the world, a living sculpture of impossible size and peculiar beauty. Fact 17. The world's smallest flower. At the opposite end of the spectrum is the world's smallest flowering plant, Wolfia globosa, also known as duckweed or Asian watermeal. This entire plant is just 0.004 to 0.008 inches in diameter, barely visible to the naked eye, smaller than a grain of salt. Yet despite its infinitesimal size, it is a complete flowering plant, capable of reproduction and growth. It floats on the surface of water, looking like a tiny green cornmeal scattered across a pond. Duckweeds are the smallest flowering plants known to science, yet they reproduce so prolifically that they can cover entire ponds and lakes. Nature has compressed all the mechanisms of life and reproduction into a space so small it requires a microscope to see, a reminder that perfection exists at every scale. Fact 18. Structural coloration in flowers. Not all flower color comes from pigments. Some flowers produce color through a phenomenon called structural coloration, where tiny surface structures interfere with light waves, creating colors without any pigment at all. Some tulips display iridescence this way, their petals shimmering and changing color as you move around them. Edelweiss flowers use photonic crystals to diffract light into specific colors. These physical structures, invisible to the eye, bend and scatter light in precise ways, creating colors that seem almost supernatural. This mechanism is the same technology scientists are now trying to replicate for nanotechnology and advanced materials. Nature discovered it millions of years ago, using it simply to attract pollinators with impossible shimmering hues. Fact 19. Color change as a signal. Some flowers change color intentionally, using this transformation as communication. In Viola cornuta, color change acts as a signal to pollinators. A flower that's already been visited and pollinated will change color, signaling to insects that there's no more nectar here, directing them to flowers that still have rewards to offer. This is a form of language written not in words but in pigment, a conversation between flower and pollinator happening millions of times every day across the world. Other flowers change color in response to temperature, to soil pH, to the metals present in the ground they grow in. Hydrangeas are famous for this, their pink flowers turning blue in acidic soil and remaining pink in alkaline conditions. Fact 20. Ultraviolet flower patterns. If you had the ability to see ultraviolet light like a bee does, flowers would appear completely different. Many flowers display ultraviolet patterns completely invisible to human eyes. Landing strips, bullseyes, stripes, and guides that direct pollinators exactly where to go. That these ultraviolet patterns are called nectar guides, and they're like landing lights at an airport, guiding insects to the flower's center where nectar and pollen wait. We see a simple daisy, but a bee sees a flower covered in glowing directional signs, unmissable instructions on exactly where to land and where to find food. This hidden world of ultraviolet communication has been happening for millions of years, an entire visual language we only recently discovered, speaking in colors we cannot naturally perceive. Fact 21. Petals as attraction devices. Petals evolved specifically to attract pollinators, and their features were shaped by evolutionary pressure over millions of years. Large, showy petals attract large insects and birds. Small, delicate petals might attract smaller insects. Bright colors evolved in response to what different creatures could see. Flowers pollinated by bees often display blues, purples, and yellows, colors bees can see clearly. Flowers pollinated by birds often display reds, as many birds have excellent color vision for reds, while insects often cannot see red wavelengths. The fragrance of petals evolved similarly, becoming attractive to the specific animals that would pollinate them. A flower is essentially an advertisement, a visual and olfactory invitation that says to the world, "Come visit me, take my pollen, help me reproduce. In return, I'll give you food." Fact 22. The heliotropism of sunflowers. Sunflowers track the sun throughout the day in a behavior called heliotropism. Young sunflower buds follow the sun from east to west, their faces turning throughout the day in a kind of slow dance with the sun. This movement exposes more of the flower to sunlight, raising its temperature and making it more attractive to pollinators. As the sun rises in the east and the flower follows it westward, the flower's temperature rises, making the pollen and nectar warmer and more aromatic, more attractive to bees. The young flower's dedication to following the sun actually increases its chances of successful pollination. Yet, once the sunflower matures and blooms fully, it stops this daily chase. Mature sunflowers typically face east, awaiting the morning sun, having completed their solar ritual. Fact 23. Nighttime bloomers. Moonflowers live a completely different existence than daylight bloomers. These flowers, including the beautifully named moonflower, bloom only at night, their petals unfurling as darkness falls and closing again as dawn approaches. This strategy evolved in plants whose pollinators are nocturnal: moths, certain bats, and night-flying insects. For these flowers, the darkness is day, the light is night. They open their blooms when their pollinators are awake and active, timing their availability to the rhythms of the creatures that will fertilize them. During the day, moonflowers remain closed, protecting their reproductive parts from the sun's intense heat and from daytime insects that might visit but cannot effectively pollinate them. Fact 24. Pigments that create red flowers. Red flowers exist across the world in stunning variety, yet true red pigments in flowers are relatively rare. Most flower colors come from three main families of pigments. Anthocyanins create blues and purples, carotenoids create yellows and oranges, and flavanols create whites and creams. True reds actually come from special combinations of anthocyanins and other compounds, or sometimes from carotenoids alone. Some red flowers aren't truly red at all. They're dark purple or magenta, which our eyes perceive as red. The deepest reds, the almost black reds you see in certain roses and dahlias, come from such high concentrations of dark anthocyanins that the light reflecting off the petals is absorbed rather than bounced back to our eyes. Fact 25. Yellow as the color of joy. Yellow flowers are among the most cheerful, and there's evolutionary logic behind this. Many yellow flowers are pollinated by bees, who can see yellow clearly and are attracted to its brightness. Yellow flowers often also produce abundant nectar and pollen, rewards that match the visual invitation. Daffodils, sunflowers, marigolds, and buttercups bring joy not just because of our cultural associations with yellow and happiness, but because they genuinely are abundant, generous with their nectar, and successful at attracting pollinators. When a flower is doing well, thriving, producing lots of food for visitors, it tends to be brightly colored. There's a correlation between visual brightness and nutritional abundance. Flowers that look happy tend to be generous. Fact 26. White flowers and their nocturnal strategy. White flowers often have a special significance in the plant world. Pale or white flowers are typically visible in low light conditions, making them perfect for flowers that bloom at dawn, dusk, or in deep shade. White flowers are also frequently fragrant, using scent as an additional attraction since they're not advertising visually. Many white flowers are pollinated by moths and other nocturnal creatures, and white visibility is crucial for nighttime pollinators. Interestingly, white flowers also have cultural significance across many human cultures, often associated with purity, innocence, and new beginnings. Across continents and centuries, humans seem to have intuited something true, that white flowers do indeed speak of fresh starts and new possibilities. Fact 27. Purple as rarity and prestige. Purple flowers are less common than red, blue, or yellow flowers, and historically purple pigments have been rare and expensive. This contributed to purple flowers developing associations with luxury, royalty, and prestige. Irises, lavender, lilacs, and violets have long held special significance in gardens specifically because purple is less abundant in nature than other colors. The rarity of true purple pigments meant that purple flowers were harder for plants to manufacture, so those that produced deep purples were showing off, displaying their genetic superiority in producing complex compounds. Human cultures picked up on this and incorporated purple flowers into royal gardens and ceremonial settings, extending and reinforcing the association between purple and prestige. Fact 28. Orange as a bridge between colors. Orange flowers are less common than reds or yellows, making them special bridges between these two more common colors. Marigolds, calendula, tiger lilies, and nasturtiums display orange hues that are warm and energizing. Orange in flowers comes from carotenoid pigments, the same pigments that make carrots orange and tomatoes red. These pigments are powerful antioxidants, helping protect the plant from sun damage. Flowers that display orange are often highlighting that they have these protective compounds. In a sense, they're showing strength and vitality. Orange flowers are less common than their red and yellow neighbors, which makes them special, valuable for adding contrast and variation to a garden's palette. Fact 29. The mystery of true black flowers. Truly black flowers are incredibly rare, and no known flowering plant produces flowers that are completely black. What we call black flowers, like black roses, black tulips, and black dahlias, are actually extremely dark purple, maroon, or near black shades that appear black at first glance. The reason flowers don't evolve to be truly black is practical. Black absorbs most light wavelengths, and very little light reflects back. A truly black flower would absorb the sun's heat excessively, potentially damaging the delicate reproductive structures inside. Additionally, black is nearly invisible to most pollinators. The black flowers that exist are close enough to black to look dramatic while still reflecting just enough light to be visible to their pollinators. Nature has limits to its darkness, even in flowers. Fact 30. Iridescent flowers. Some flowers display iridescence, their colors shifting and changing as you move around them. Certain orchids and tulips display this shimmering quality. The mechanism behind this is structural coloration. Tiny ridges and structures on the petal surface bend light in specific ways, creating colors that seem to move and change. This iridescence can serve multiple purposes. It can make the flower stand out more dramatically to potential pollinators, the shimmering motion drawing attention. It can also be a form of thermoregulation, the microscopic structures helping control the temperature of the flower. Iridescent flowers are living optical instruments, combining art and physics in ways that seem almost impossible for nature to achieve. Fact 31. The genetic control of flower color. Flower color is controlled by genes, yet the same genes can produce different colors depending on environmental conditions. A hydrangea's genes determine its capacity to be pink or blue, but the soil pH ultimately decides which color it becomes. This interaction between genetics and environment reminds us that nature rarely operates in absolutes. A flower carries the genetic possibility for a range of colors, and its surroundings help determine which possibility becomes reality. Plant breeders have used this knowledge to create new flower colors, selecting for genetic combinations and then optimizing environmental conditions to bring out specific hues. In greenhouses around the world, scientists are literally painting with genes and light, creating flowers in colors nature might never have produced alone. Section 3. The silent communication. Facts 32 to 46. Fact 32. Flowers as scent producers. Flowers produce scents for a single purpose, to attract pollinators. The fragrance of a flower is essentially a chemical message, a kind of aerial broadcast saying, "I'm here, I have food, come visit me." Different flowers produce different scents to attract different pollinators. Flowers pollinated by bees often smell sweet and pleasant, appealing to the insects that are attracted to sweet substances. Flowers pollinated by flies sometimes smell like rotting meat or feces, which attracts the flies that associate these smells with places to lay their eggs. Flowers pollinated by bats might smell unpleasant to humans but attractive to bats. Every flower's scent is perfectly calibrated for its intended audience, a chemical message in a language older, more universal than human speech. Fact 33. The complexity of floral fragrance. A single flower's scent might contain dozens or hundreds of different aromatic compounds. Roses are known for their fragrance, yet a rose's scent is composed of over 300 different chemical compounds, each one contributing to the overall bouquet. Lavender's distinctive scent comes from linalool and linalool acetate. Jasmine's seductive fragrance comes from methylanthranilate and benzyl acetate. The combinations are infinite, each one unique as a fingerprint. Plants synthesize these compounds through complex biochemical pathways, investing significant energy into their production. This investment tells us something important. Scent matters. For flowers, the energy spent creating fragrance is an investment in reproduction, in attracting the precise pollinators needed for fertilization. Fact 34. Scent variation throughout the day. Flowers don't produce the same amount of fragrance throughout the day and night. Many flowers intensify their scent during specific hours when their pollinators are most active. A flower pollinated by daytime bees might increase its fragrance during daylight hours. A flower pollinated by nocturnal moths might produce its strongest scent at night. This variation serves multiple purposes. It conserves the plant's energy by only producing expensive scent when pollinators are around to receive the message, and it increases the efficiency of pollination. It's another layer of communication, another way flowers are having conversations with the insects and creatures that visit them. All of it happening silently, continuously, all around us. Fact 35, the romance between flowers and insects. Orchids have evolved some of the most sophisticated pollination mechanisms of any flower. Some orchid species have evolved flowers that mimic female insects so perfectly that male insects attempt to mate with the flower. The male insect becomes sexually aroused by the fake female, trying to copulate with the bloom, and in the process transfers pollen from flower to flower. This is called pseudocopulation or sexual deception. Other orchids produce nectar that contains psychoactive compounds, essentially intoxicating their pollinators. Some orchids emit pheromones identical to those produced by female insects, irresistibly drawing males to them. These flowers have essentially learned to manipulate the behavior of their pollinators through deception and chemistry, creating relationships that are simultaneously beautiful and deeply strange. Fact 36. Nectaries and reward systems. Flowers produce nectar as a reward for pollinators, but nectar is expensive to make. Nectar is essentially sugar dissolved in water, and producing it requires the plant to dedicate significant energy and resources. Some flowers produce abundant nectar, essentially saying, "Come visit me, I'll give you plenty of food." Other flowers produce minimal nectar, making the visitor work harder to get what they seek. The amount of nectar a flower produces is calibrated to the kind of pollinator it's trying to attract and the energy investment it's willing to make. A large flower attracting large bees might produce abundant nectar. A small flower might produce just enough to attract a tiny insect. This careful calibration represents millions of years of evolutionary negotiation between flowers and their pollinators. Fact 37. The explosion of pollen. Some flowers have evolved explosive mechanisms for pollen dispersal. When a pollinator lands on the flower's stamen, the flower literally explodes, projecting pollen onto the visiting insect. This violent dispersal ensures that pollen sticks to the visitor and will almost certainly be carried to the next flower. The flower is essentially flinging its pollen onto the pollinator, ensuring effective transfer through sheer force. This mechanism evolved in flowers that needed to guarantee successful pollination, perhaps because they had infrequent visitors or because the environment was particularly challenging. The explosion takes milliseconds, too quick for the insect to escape, and the pollen sticks through a combination of shape and stickiness. It's a remarkable solution to the challenge of transferring pollen effectively. Fact 38. Flowers that attract hummingbirds. Hummingbirds pollinate flowers, and certain flowers have evolved specifically to attract them. These flowers are typically red, a color that stands out dramatically against green foliage and is attractive to hummingbirds. The flowers often have a tubular shape that perfectly matches the hummingbird's long, slender beak. They produce abundant nectar to provide the enormous amounts of energy hummingbirds need to support their incredibly fast metabolism. Interestingly, many hummingbird flowers have little or no scent, since hummingbirds rely primarily on vision rather than smell. These flowers are visual and energetic, designed to attract creatures as fast and precise as the flowers themselves. Fact 39. Butterfly-pollinated flowers. Butterflies have different needs than bees, and flowers have evolved accordingly. Butterfly-pollinated flowers often have clusters of small flowers grouped together in a way that gives butterflies a landing platform. These flowers are often pink, orange, or red, colors that attract butterflies. The flowers typically have minimal scent, since butterflies navigate primarily through vision. The landing platform created by clustered flowers gives butterflies space to perch while they feed. Milkweed flowers, which are crucial to monarch butterfly reproduction, display this pattern perfectly. The butterfly population and milkweed population exist in intimate relationship, each one shaped by the other, a dance of coevolution that's been happening for millions of years. Fact 40. Flowers pollinated by bats. Bats pollinate flowers, and this has led to an extraordinary group of blooms called chiropterophilous flowers. These flowers have evolved to bloom at night when bats are active, and they often have pale or white flowers that are more visible in darkness. They produce abundant nectar and have a musky smell attractive to bats, but often unpleasant to humans. Some bat-pollinated flowers have a brush-like structure inside them that deposits pollen directly onto the bat's face and head as it feeds. Agave, baobab, and mango flowers are pollinated by bats in parts of the world. The bats, in turn, depend on these flowers for essential nutrition. This relationship demonstrates that pollination isn't only about flowers attracting insects. It's a relationship that benefits both partners. Fact 41. Wind-pollinated flowers. Not all flowers rely on animals for pollination. Some flowers have evolved to be pollinated by wind, and these flowers look dramatically different from their insect-pollinated cousins. Wind-pollinated flowers like grasses, ragweed, and corn typically lack colorful petals since there's no animal to attract. Instead, they produce enormous quantities of pollen, essentially throwing pollen into the air and hoping some reaches another flower. Wind-pollinated flowers often have feathery stigmas designed to catch pollen particles floating through the air. They typically produce little or no nectar, since there's no pollinator to reward. These flowers are efficient but wasteful, producing far more pollen than actually reaches another flower. It's a numbers game, quantity over precision. Fact 42. Self-pollinating flowers. Some flowers pollinate themselves, a strategy called self-pollination. These flowers might have their stamens and pistils in very close proximity, or they might produce both male and female flowers on the same plant that can pollinate each other. Self-pollination is efficient. It requires no external help, but it reduces genetic diversity. Plants that self-pollinate often need to produce offspring quickly in uncertain conditions, or they live in isolated environments where cross-pollination with other plants is impossible. Tomato flowers, peanut flowers, and many legumes self-pollinate. Self-pollination is a survival strategy, a way to reproduce when life circumstances don't permit the luxury of waiting for a pollinator. Fact 43. The flower's reproductive architecture. All flowers, despite their infinite variety, share a fundamental architecture. Most flowers have 4 distinct whorls or circular levels, arranged around a central axis. The outermost whorl consists of sepals, which protect the flower in bud. Inside that is the corolla, consisting of petals that attract pollinators. Inside the petals is the androecium, the male reproductive parts consisting of stamens. In the very center is the gynoecium, the female reproductive part consisting of 1 or more pistils. These parts remain fundamentally consistent across all flowering plants, from tiny flowers invisible to the naked eye to the massive rafflesia. It's a template that has worked for millions of years, endlessly refined but fundamentally unchanged. Fact 44. The stamen and anther. The stamen is the male reproductive part of the flower, consisting of a filament, a thin stalk topped with an anther. The anther is where pollen is produced. Pollen grains contain the male genetic material needed for reproduction. The anther often displays striking colors or patterns, positioned to make contact with visiting pollinators. When a pollinator lands on or crawls into the flower, pollen grains stick to its body. Some pollen grains are smooth and round, designed to roll off onto other flowers. Others are spiky or sticky, designed to cling to specific pollinators. The anther is essentially the flower's reproductive broadcasting system, dispersing genetic material to any visitor willing to carry it. Fact 45. The pistil and stigma. The pistil is the female reproductive part of the flower, extending from the center of the bloom. At its tip is the stigma, the part that receives pollen. Below the stigma is the style, a kind of stalk. Below that is the ovary, where seeds will develop if fertilization occurs. The stigma is often sticky or has a feathery texture designed to catch and hold pollen grains. Once pollen lands on the stigma, it begins to grow a pollen tube down through the style toward the ovary. This pollen tube carries the male genetic material down to where the egg cells wait. The pistil is the flower's receiver, its way of accepting genetic material from other flowers and through that acceptance, creating new life. Fact 46. The mystery of pollination success. Scientists still don't fully understand all the mechanisms that make pollination successful. We know flowers are pollinated, we can watch it happen, but the exact chemical and physical processes that determine which pollen successfully fertilizes a flower and which doesn't remain partly mysterious. Some flowers appear to select among different pollen grains, essentially choosing which genetic material will be used. Others seem to accept pollen more indiscriminately. The entire system, the compatibility between specific flowers and specific pollen, the barriers that prevent some flowers from self-pollinating, the mechanisms that ensure genetic diversity, remains an area of active scientific research. Even after millions of years of flowers blooming and pollinators visiting, mystery remains. Section 4. Flowers across cultures and time. Facts 4763. Fact 47. Flowers in ancient Egypt. Ancient Egyptian civilization was intimately connected to flowers. The Nile River's annual flooding created ideal conditions for flowers, and flowers held spiritual significance in Egyptian culture. Lotus flowers were especially sacred, appearing in jewelry, art, and religious ceremonies. Egyptians used flower garlands in celebrations and rituals. Flower oils and perfumes made from flower petals were luxuries afforded only to the wealthy and powerful. Flowers were so important to Egyptian culture that their treatment was part of religious law. Tomb paintings consistently include flowers, suggesting that Egyptians believed flowers would be important in the afterlife. The connection between ancient Egypt and flowers reminds us that flowers aren't simply decorative. They're deeply tied to how humans experience meaning and spirituality. Fact 48. Medieval gardens and symbolism. During the Middle Ages in Europe, flowers held both practical and symbolic significance. Monastery gardens grew flowers not just for beauty, but for medicinal purposes. Many flowers were believed to have healing properties, some correctly, some through superstition. Flowers appeared in medieval art, manuscripts, and tapestries, each one chosen for symbolic meaning. The rose became associated with the Virgin Mary, lilies with purity, peonies with prosperity. Specific flower combinations in medieval art conveyed messages to those who could read them. Gardens during this period were enclosed spaces called cloister gardens, representing paradise on earth, a place of peace and spiritual contemplation. These medieval flowers, grown in enclosed gardens by monks and nobles, represent one of the ways humans have always used flowers to create meaning and beauty. Fact 49. Japanese flower culture. Japan has an extraordinarily rich tradition of flower appreciation and cultivation. Cherry blossoms, or sakura, hold special significance, appearing in art, literature, and celebration for centuries. The blooming of cherry blossoms is celebrated annually with festivals where families gather under the blooming trees to celebrate the brief beauty of the flowers and contemplate the transience of life. The practice of ikebana, or flower arrangement, has been refined into a sophisticated art form in Japan. Ikebana isn't about creating a pretty arrangement. It's about capturing the essence of nature, the relationships between elements, the beauty and simplicity. Chrysanthemums also hold special significance in Japan, and the imperial family uses the chrysanthemum as its official seal. Japanese culture has woven flowers so deeply into its fabric that flowers become a language for discussing beauty, time, and impermanence. Fact 50. Flowers in weddings. Weddings across cultures incorporate flowers, and this tradition reaches back thousands of years. Ancient Romans used flowers in wedding ceremonies. Orange blossoms came to symbolize fertility and new beginnings. Wedding bouquets originated in part from practical concerns. Flowers were thought to have protective properties and to mask unpleasant odors, but they also became symbolic of the beauty and fertility of the union. Different cultures have incorporated different flowers into wedding traditions. In some Asian cultures, red flowers symbolize happiness and luck in marriage. In Western cultures, white flowers often symbolize purity and new beginnings. Weddings have essentially turned flowers into a language for expressing hopes and blessings around the union of two people. The flowers themselves, selected for their colors and meanings, carry the hopes of families and communities. Fact 51. Flowers in religious practice. Flowers appear in religious practice across faiths and cultures. Lotus flowers in Buddhism represent purity and enlightenment. Roses in Christianity symbolize divine love. Marigolds in Hinduism are offered to deities in worship. Flowers are used in Islamic celebration and art, though their depiction sometimes involves careful consideration of religious tradition. In Jewish tradition, certain flowers are used in specific ceremonies and religious seasons. Native American traditions incorporate flowers and plant life into spiritual practices. Flowers in religious contexts often represent divine beauty, spiritual purity, or the transience of earthly existence. The universal human impulse to include flowers in spiritual practice suggests something essential, that flowers speak to something sacred in human experience. Fact 52. The language of flowers in Victorian times. Victorian society was governed by strict rules about what could be said, especially regarding emotions. This led to the development of an elaborate code of flower meanings, allowing people to communicate feelings they were forbidden to express directly. A single red rose meant deep romantic love. Yellow roses meant friendship or concern. Withered flowers meant rejected love. Flowers given upside down were an insult, while flowers presented upright were an honor. The arrangement of flowers mattered. Flowers on the left side of the body meant one thing. Flowers on the right meant another. This coded language allowed Victorian society to experience hidden depths of communication beneath polite surfaces. Love stories were told in flowers, proposals made with careful arrangements, heartbreaks communicated through chosen colors and forms. Fact 53. Flowers and poetic tradition. Flowers appear throughout poetry and literature as symbols of beauty, love, mortality, and transience. From Sappho's ancient Greek poems to contemporary verse, flowers have been subjects of intense poetic attention. The flower appears in poetry as both literal object and profound metaphor. Poets have used flowers to explore themes of beauty and death, love and loss, renewal and time. The rose, the most popular flower in poetry, has been used for thousands of years to symbolize love, beauty, desire, and passion. Daisies appear as symbols of innocence and faithfulness. Poppies symbolize pleasure and sleep. The flower in poetry represents something beyond its physical form. It becomes a gateway into deep human experience. As you rest, imagine all the poetry written to flowers. All the verses inspired by petals and fragrance and bloom, words flowing from human hearts, moved by beauty. Fact 54. Flowers in painting and visual art. Flowers have inspired visual artists for centuries. From ancient Egyptian paintings to Renaissance masterpieces to contemporary art, flowers appear as subjects of intense artistic attention. Flower still lifes became a major artistic genre, with artists competing to capture the perfect rendering of blooms. Paintings like Sunflowers and Irises by Van Gogh showcase the intensity with which artists have engaged with flowers. Japanese woodblock prints feature flowers in compositions of extraordinary subtlety. Contemporary artists continue to explore flowers as subjects, investigating beauty, impermanence, and the relationship between observer and observed. In visual art, as in literature, flowers represent more than themselves. They're vehicles for exploring the human condition, for creating beauty that reflects and comments on beauty itself. Fact 55. The first wine grapes. Some of the earliest flowers cultivated by humans were grapevines. The first wine grapes were cultivated approximately 8,000 years ago in Mesopotamia, making them among humanity's oldest agricultural achievements. The cultivation of grapes for wine represents a partnership between humans and plants that has lasted thousands of years. This agricultural relationship shaped human civilization, creating value, trade routes, culture, and community. Wine production relies on the flower of the grape, which develops into fruit containing seeds. The relationship between humans and grapes shows how deeply flowers and the plants they develop into are woven into human history and society. As you drift to sleep, imagine those ancient vineyards, those first flowers discovered and cultivated, the knowledge slowly accumulated about how to coax these plants to produce wine. Fact 56. Flowers in food and cuisine. Flowers are not just beautiful, they're delicious. Nasturtiums have a peppery flavor and are used in salads. Rose petals can be candied or used in teas. Violets and pansies are edible and used to decorate cakes and desserts. Calendula and borage flowers are used in culinary applications. Dandelion flowers are used in wine and salads. Squash blossoms are stuffed and fried. Chrysanthemum tea is a traditional Asian beverage. Lavender is used in baking and cooking. This culinary use of flowers represents an ancient knowledge that's being rediscovered. For millennia, humans knew which flowers could be eaten, which had medicinal properties, which were safe for consumption. In recent years, chef culture has rediscovered edible flowers, incorporating them into fine dining. The flower as food represents a partnership between humans and plants, an appreciation of flowers that goes beyond visual and olfactory to include taste. 57. Flowers in traditional medicine. Flowers have been used medicinally for thousands of years across cultures. Echinacea flowers are used to support immune function. Calendula flowers have traditionally been used to promote skin healing. Chamomile flowers are used to support relaxation and digestion. Lavender flowers are used for relaxation and to ease tension. Hibiscus is used in traditional medicine for various purposes. Garlic flowers are believed to have health-supporting properties. This traditional knowledge reflects careful observation accumulated over generations. Modern science has validated many of these traditional uses, finding active compounds in flowers that support the medicinal properties that cultures observed. 70,000 plant species are used medicinally worldwide, and many of these species include flowers as the active part used. The flower contains the seed of the plant, and in that seed often lies concentrated power, nutritive, medicinal, and healing power. Fact 58. Flowers in fashion. Flowers have influenced fashion throughout history. In some periods, flowers worn in the hair were fashionable. Flower patterns in fabrics have been perennially popular, allowing people to carry floral beauty in their clothing. Flowers have been printed, woven, and embroidered into textiles for thousands of years. Flower crowns appear in cultures worldwide, from ancient Greece to contemporary festivals. The scent of flowers has influenced perfume and fragrance creation for centuries. Some of the world's most expensive perfumes contain flower essences. Flowers in fashion represent the human desire to surround ourselves with beauty, to incorporate nature into our daily appearance and presence. Wearing flowers, whether literal blooms or floral patterns, allows people to carry the symbolic weight and visual joy of flowers with them through their day. Fact 59. Flowers as symbols of national identity. Many nations have selected flowers as official national symbols. The United States designated the rose as its national flower. England selected the rose. Scotland chose the thistle. Wales selected the daffodil. Japan's imperial family uses the chrysanthemum. These selections often reflect both the presence of the flower in the nation's landscape and cultural significance of the bloom. The flower becomes a symbol of the nation's identity, representing values and characteristics the people associate with the bloom. When people fight for or celebrate their nation, they're often also honoring these flowers, creating layers of meaning around botanical reality. A national flower carries the hopes and identity of millions of people, making it far more than a simple plant. Fact 60. Flowers in celebration and festival. Across cultures and centuries, flowers have been central to celebration and festival. Flower festivals celebrate the blooming of specific flowers. Cherry blossom festivals in Japan and other Asian countries, rose festivals in various regions, tulip festivals in Holland. These celebrations often coincide with seasonal transitions, marking the turning of the year and the arrival of warmer weather. Flowers are used in decorations for celebrations across cultures, from religious festivals to secular celebrations. Wedding celebrations incorporate flowers. Funeral ceremonies incorporate flowers. Birth celebrations often include flowers. Flowers mark the significant moments in human life, creating a botanical language for important transitions. The universal human impulse to include flowers in celebration suggests that flowers speak to something deep, perhaps the beauty that persists despite difficulty, or the way renewal constantly appears, or simply the joy that color and fragrance can bring. Fact 61. Flowers in climate change. Flowers are sensitive to climate and environmental conditions, making them indicators of climate change. Species that bloom at specific times in spring are now blooming earlier. Plants are shifting their ranges, moving northward or to higher elevations, seeking appropriate climates. Some flowers are threatened with extinction as their native habitats change. Approximately 40% of all known wild plant species are in deep trouble, threatened by climate change, habitat destruction, and other human-caused factors. The fate of flowers reflects the fate of entire ecosystems. When flowers bloom out of sync with their pollinators, or when pollinators disappear because of climate disruption, the entire web of life is affected. Flowers, beautiful and delicate as they are also indicators of profound planetary stress. Fact 62. Flowers in urban environments. Increasingly, flowers are appearing in urban environments where human habitat dominates. Urban gardens, community gardens, and green spaces provide places where flowers can bloom in cities. Some cities have incorporated green spaces and gardens into their infrastructure. These urban flowers provide more than visual beauty, they provide crucial habitat for urban pollinators like bees and butterflies. Urban flowers represent humanity's effort to maintain connection with nature in spaces increasingly dominated by concrete and asphalt. As more of human population becomes urban, the importance of urban flowers increases. The flowers blooming in city parks and gardens represent small acts of rebellion against purely human-built environments, maintaining botanical beauty and ecological function even in concrete jungles. Fact 63. The future of flowers. The future of flowers remains uncertain, caught between threats and possibilities. Climate change, habitat destruction, and pollution threaten many flower species. Yet scientific advances offer possibilities. Genetic research might help preserve threatened species, create flowers more resilient to climate stress, or develop flowers with enhanced beneficial properties. Conservation efforts worldwide work to protect endangered flower species. Seed banks preserve the genetic diversity of flowers against future disaster. Urban gardeners and scientists are working together to maintain flower diversity in human-dominated landscapes. The future of flowers will be determined by choices humans make in coming years and decades. As you drift towards sleep, you might carry a quiet hope that humanity will choose to preserve and protect the flowers that have inspired us, sustained us, and brought us joy for thousands of years. Section 5. The science of scent and sensation. Fact 64. How flowers create fragrance. Flowers produce fragrance through complex biochemical processes. Aromatic compounds are synthesized in specialized cells and stored in tiny structures called trichomes on the petal surface. When conditions are right, often when the flower is visited by pollinators, the plant releases these aromatic compounds into the air. This release is energetically expensive for the plant. The plant is literally pumping volatile compounds into the air, hoping to attract pollinators. This massive expenditure of energy tells us how important scent is to pollination success for some flowers. The plant would not invest this energy unless it significantly increased the chances of successful reproduction. Every flower's scent is essentially a vote of confidence in its importance as an attractant to specific pollinators. Fact 65. The evolution of flower fragrance. Flower fragrance evolved over millions of years in response to the creatures that pollinated them. Flowers pollinated by insects attracted to sweet smells developed sweet fragrances. Flowers pollinated by flies evolved to smell like rot or feces, mimicking the smells flies associate with reproduction. Flowers pollinated by bats evolved musky or fruity scents attractive to those mammals. This coevolution created an extraordinary diversity of scents, from the sweetest rose perfume to the foulest carrion flower stench. No single correct flower fragrance exists. Instead, there are thousands of fragrances, each perfectly calibrated to attract the specific pollinator that will fertilize that specific flower. It's an example of evolutionary precision, the way life creates perfect solutions to specific problems. Fact 66. Scent and memory. Scent is the sense most directly connected to memory in human brains. When you smell a flower, the scent molecules travel through your nasal passages to your olfactory bulb, which connects directly to the limbic system, the part of your brain responsible for emotion and memory. This direct connection means that scent can trigger vivid memories and strong emotions in ways that other senses often cannot. A particular flower fragrance might transport you instantly to a specific moment in your past, to a person, a place, a time. This is why perfumes are so powerful, why scent is used in marketing, why the smell of a favorite flower can be so moving. As you drift to sleep, scent memories might float through your mind, carrying you toward dreams filled with remembered gardens and favorite blooms. Fact 67. Lavender and relaxation. Lavender has become synonymous with relaxation in contemporary culture, and this association appears to have a basis in science. Lavender fragrance has been shown in studies to support relaxation and to potentially help with sleep quality. The compounds in lavender, particularly linalool and linyl acetate, appear to have calming properties. Whether this is purely chemical or partially psychological remains debated by scientists. Does lavender calm us chemically, or do we calm ourselves when we experience something we've been taught to associate with relaxation? The answer is probably both. The mind and body are deeply connected, and if lavender sets your mind at ease, that mental ease will manifest as physical relaxation. As you rest here, the very thought of lavender might begin to relax your nervous system. Fact 68. Rose fragrance and complexity. Roses have been valued for their fragrance for thousands of years, and modern analysis reveals why. A rose's scent contains over 300 distinct chemical compounds, each one contributing to the overall fragrance. Different rose varieties contain different ratios of compounds, creating different scents. Some roses smell like honey, some like citrus, some like spice or wood or tea. Modern rose breeding has sometimes prioritized appearance over scent, leading to beautiful roses that lack fragrance. This has led to a movement to breed roses that return to the traditional, heavily scented varieties. Rose fragrance represents complexity, the way a single thing can contain multitudes, the way depth and richness can emerge from the combination of many elements. Fact 69. Jasmine night blooming fragrance. Jasmine flowers are famous for their intense fragrance, which they produce particularly strongly in evening and at night. Jasmine fragrance comes from compounds including benzyl acetate and methyl anthranilate. The intensity of jasmine scent at night serves a purpose. Nighttime is when jasmine's pollinators are most active, so the plant ramps up its fragrance production to attract them. Jasmine fragrance has been valued for thousands of years, appearing in perfumes and in traditional medicine across cultures. The scent is so distinctive that it's instantly recognizable to many people. Jasmine in bloom at night can perfume an entire garden or courtyard, its fragrance drifting on the evening air like an invisible presence, guiding pollinators to the flowers. Fact 70. Flowers that smell like meat. Some flowers have evolved to smell like death, rot, or decaying flesh. These flowers are pollinated by carrion flies and beetles, insects that are attracted to decomposing meat. The flowers not only smell like rot, but sometimes have a deep reddish-black color that makes them look like dead tissue. To these flowers' intended pollinators, this is the most beautiful fragrance in the world, an irresistible invitation. The Rafflesia, famous for smelling like rotting flesh, uses this strategy to attract the insects it needs for pollination. To humans, these flowers are deeply unpleasant, their fragrance triggering disgust. Yet to the flies that pollinate them, the same fragrance is essential, guiding them to food and reproduction. This teaches us that fragrance is not objectively pleasant or unpleasant. It's purely a matter of perspective and need. Fact 71. Flowers and heat production. Some flowers produce heat as well as scent. The corpse flower, which can reach 15 feet tall and smells strongly of rotting flesh, generates significant heat. The temperature at the center of a corpse flower can be much higher than the surrounding air temperature. This heat has multiple purposes. It helps volatilize the flower's smell, sending the odorous compounds into the air more effectively. It also makes the flower more attractive to insects, which are drawn to warm areas as they indicate the presence of decomposing material. The heat production of flowers is energetically expensive, yet some flowers have evolved this adaptation because the benefit, increased pollination success, outweighs the cost. A flower that heats itself is literally broadcasting its location and availability to pollinators. Fact 72. Ultraviolet scent guides. Some flowers combine visual and olfactory signals. They produce ultraviolet patterns, visible to bees, but not to humans, that guide pollinators toward the flower's center where nectar is located. These ultraviolet patterns work in combination with the flower's scent, both signals pointing toward reward. A bee arriving at a flower doesn't just smell an invitation. It also sees glowing landing strips guiding it precisely where to go. This combination of signals increases pollination efficiency enormously. The flower is essentially communicating in multiple languages simultaneously, using whatever senses its pollinator relies on most heavily. It's an example of sophisticated botanical communication, multiple signals reinforcing and enhancing each other. Fact 73. Flowers in traditional perfumery. Traditional perfumery depends heavily on flowers. Rose oil, jasmine oil, gardenia oil, lilac absolute, and many other fragrant flower essences are used to create perfumes and colognes. Some of the world's most expensive perfumes contain flower extracts that cost thousands of dollars per ounce. Creating these fragrant oils involves harvesting flowers at the moment when their fragrance is most concentrated, then using extraction methods that preserve the delicate aromatic compounds. Some flowers require thousands of individual blooms to produce a small amount of oil. The investment required to extract and preserve flower fragrance tells us something about its value. Humans have consistently valued flowers enough to invest significant resources in capturing and preserving their scents. Fact 74. Flower fragrance and pollinator recognition. Different flowers produce distinct fragrances, and pollinators learn to recognize and prefer specific scents. A bee that has visited a particular flower species multiple times learns the fragrance and begins to search for it. This learning increases efficiency. The bee doesn't have to try every flower, just the ones with the scents it has learned to associate with food. Different bee species prefer different fragrances, so fragrance essentially acts as a lock on the flower, allowing only the right pollinators to access it. Similarly, moths learn to find flowers by their nighttime scents, and butterflies learn to recognize the flowers they prefer. This learning and recognition system between flowers and their pollinators represents one of nature's most successful communication systems. Fact 75. Flowers and color scent associations. An interesting phenomenon is that humans associate certain colors with certain scents even when the scent isn't objectively present. Red flowers, for instance, are often expected to smell sweeter or more intensely than white flowers of the same species. Orange and yellow flowers are often perceived as more citrus-scented than they actually are. This synesthesia-like response suggests that our brains combine visual and olfactory information in sophisticated ways. When we see a flower, our brain predicts what it should smell like based on its color, contributing that expected scent to what we actually perceive. This reminds us that perception is never purely objective. Our brains are constantly predicting, combining sensory information, and filling in gaps. Fact 76. The pleasantness of flower fragrance. Most humans find flower fragrance pleasant, and this appears to be somewhat universal across cultures. Even in cultures with very different aesthetic values, flowers tend to be appreciated for their beauty and fragrance. This suggests something innate in human response to flowers and their scents. Evolutionary psychologists suggest that positive response to flowers might reflect positive associations. Flowers mean food is available, water is present, the environment supports life. A human ancestor with positive response to flowers might have been more likely to seek out environments where flowers bloomed, increasing their chances of survival. This ancient wiring might remain in us today, making us predisposed to find flowers beautiful and their fragrance pleasant. Fact 77. Flowers and emotional states. Studies have shown that viewing flowers or being in environments with flowers can improve mood and reduce stress. Hospital patients in rooms with flowers have been shown to recover more quickly than patients in rooms without flowers. Office workers exposed to flowers in their workspaces report greater job satisfaction and productivity. The presence of flowers appears to trigger positive emotional states in most humans. Whether this is due to the beauty of flowers, their fragrance, their association with nature, or some combination remains research territory. What seems clear is that flowers support human well-being, psychologically, emotionally, and possibly even physiologically. As you rest here, you might imagine being surrounded by flowers, breathing their fragrance, letting their presence ease tension from your body. Fact 78. The sensory experience of flowers. Flowers engage multiple senses simultaneously. We see their color, feel their texture, smell their fragrance, sometimes taste their flavor, always experience them in their spatial environment. This multisensory experience is one reason flowers are so psychologically powerful. They're not just visual or just olfactory, they're complete sensory experiences. A flower garden engages your eyes, your nose, your tactile sense, your sense of space and balance. This multisensory richness is part of why gardens have been considered therapeutic, healing spaces for thousands of years. When you engage multiple senses in a single experience, your brain processes it more deeply, stores the memory more richly, and the experience has greater emotional impact. Flowers, by their very nature, are multisensory experiences. Section 6. Unusual and extraordinary blooms. Fact 7096. Fact 79. The Titan arum. One of the largest flowers in the world is the Titan arum, which can reach heights of 10 feet or more. The flower smells intensely of decaying flesh, hence its common name, corpse flower. The Titan arum's tremendous size and foul odor combine to make it one of the most extraordinary flowers on Earth. The heat production of the Titan arum is so significant that the air around the flower becomes noticeably warmer. This combination, enormous size, foul smell, heat production, all evolved to attract carrion insects for pollination. When the Titan arum blooms, it's an event that attracts scientists and curious humans from around the world. Botanical gardens that cultivate this flower often announce its blooming, and crowds gather to see and smell it. The Titan arum reminds us that beauty and interest are not defined by pleasantness. Fact 80. The Venus flytrap. The Venus flytrap is a carnivorous plant that traps insects and digests them. The flower's leaves have snap trap mechanisms with trigger hairs that close around prey when touched. Once closed, the trap secretes digestive enzymes that break down the insect's body, allowing the plant to absorb nutrients. This evolutionary adaptation emerged in plants growing in nutrient-poor soils. Rather than relying on soil nutrients, these plants evolved to capture them from the insects they trap. The Venus flytrap represents an extreme form of plant adaptation, showing how plants have evolved extraordinary solutions to environmental challenges. A flower that eats, rather than merely attracting pollinators, exemplifies the creativity of evolution. Fact 81. Flowers that move. Some flowers have the ability to move their parts. The Venus flytrap closes its trap in a fraction of a second. Some flowers move to track the sun throughout the day. Others respond to touch, closing or moving away from pressure. These movements seem to require mechanisms similar to those in animals, contractile fibers, water movement within cells to change turgor pressure. Yet flowers accomplish these movements without nervous systems or muscles. Instead, they use hydraulic pressure, the same principle behind water pressure systems. Pressure builds in certain cells, causing them to stiffen. When pressure releases, the cells relax and movement occurs. This mechanical hydraulic system allows flowers to move to trap to orient, all without any animal-like anatomy. Fact 82. Flowers with no leaves. The ghost orchid and some other flowers exist without leaves. Leaves are how plants typically make energy from sunlight through photosynthesis. Flowers without leaves must obtain energy another way. Some exist in symbiotic relationships with fungi that provide nutrients. Others parasitize other plants, drawing energy from their host. Still others exist in environments with such abundant decaying material that they can draw energy from decomposition. These leafless flowers represent plants that have evolved in specialized niches where traditional photosynthesis is unnecessary or impossible. They're among the strangest flowers on Earth, existing in environments that seem almost hellish to other plants, yet thriving in their particular way. Fact 83. Underwater flowers. Some flowers bloom underwater. Water lilies have evolved to bloom at the water's surface. The flowers rise up on stalks from underwater roots and bloom in air or just at the water's surface. Other flowers bloom entirely underwater, pollinated by water currents rather than insects or wind. These underwater flowers represent the extraordinary adaptability of flowering plants. Life evolved in water before ever living on land. Flowers later evolved and became dominant on land. Yet some flowers have essentially moved back to water, re-evolving the mechanisms necessary to live and reproduce in aquatic environments. It's evolution in reverse, showing how plants continue to diversify and adapt even after establishing themselves in new environments. Fact 84. Flowers in extreme climates. Flowers bloom in extreme environments, the hottest deserts, the coldest regions near glaciers, The highest mountains, the lowest valleys. Flowers have adapted to bloom in environments that seem impossible for life. In the high mountains, flowers bloom briefly during the few warm weeks available, growing close to the ground to avoid wind and conserve warmth. In deserts, flowers have evolved to remain dormant for years until rare rains trigger blooming. In the Arctic and Antarctic regions near glaciers, small flowers bloom in areas where ice dominates. These flowers represent life's ultimate persistence, the way organisms continue to find ways to exist and reproduce even in the most challenging conditions imaginable. Fact 85. The Rafflesia, master parasite. The Rafflesia has no leaves, no roots, no ability to photosynthesize. Instead, it's a complete parasite living inside the vines of the grapevine family. The Rafflesia sends no energy into leaves or stems. It exists entirely as tissue within its host vine. The flower emerges from this parasitic tissue when the time is right. It's essentially all flower. The plant's entire existence is dedicated to reproduction through its massive bloom. The Rafflesia's parasitic existence lets it invest all available energy into producing one enormous flower, a strategy that works for this particular ecological niche. It's an extreme solution to the challenge of survival. Give up everything else and commit entirely to reproduction. Fact 86. Flowers that bloom for hours or days. Most flowers bloom for days or weeks, giving pollinators multiple opportunities to visit. Yet some flowers bloom for only hours. Morning glories bloom only in the morning, closing as heat increases in the afternoon. Some flowers bloom for a single night. This brief blooming makes those flowers incredibly valuable to the pollinators they attract. Insects know that if they miss the bloom, it won't reappear tomorrow. The brevity creates urgency, essentially saying to pollinators, act now or miss this forever. Some scientists believe these brief bloomings are responses to specific pollinator activity patterns. A flower that blooms only when its specific pollinator is active maximizes pollination efficiency. Fact 87. Flowers with extreme shapes. Some flowers have evolved into extraordinary shapes. Some flowers look like flying birds, earning the name flying duck orchid. Others resemble monkeys, orchids resembling bearded men, flowers shaped like dancing ladies. These extreme shapes aren't accidental. They've evolved to attract specific pollinators. A flower shaped like a female insect will attract male insects attempting to mate with it. A flower shaped like an open mouth might appeal to certain birds. These shapes represent the creative solutions flowers have evolved to distinguish themselves and attract specific pollinators. A flower's shape is literally its advertisement, saying to the world, I'm here, I'm valuable, I have what you need. Fact 88. The bee orchid. One of the most remarkable examples of flower-pollinator coevolution is the bee orchid. This flower has evolved to closely resemble a female bee. The flower even releases pheromones similar to those produced by female bees. Male bees are attracted to the flower, attempt to mate with it, and in the process transfer pollen from flower to flower. The deception is so complete that male bees actively seek out the flowers, essentially choosing to be deceived. This represents an evolutionary arms race in miniature, the orchid evolving to better deceive its pollinator, the bee's preference for the orchid possibly becoming so strong it's eventually more attracted to the fake female than real females. It's an extraordinary example of flowers manipulating animal behavior through evolved deception. 89. Carnivorous flowers. Beyond the Venus flytrap, other carnivorous plants produce flowers. The pitcher plant produces flowers, and the plant itself functions like a carnivorous trap. The bladderwort produces delicate flowers, and the plant itself can trap small aquatic animals in tiny bladders. Sundews produce pretty flowers, while the plant is covered in sticky droplets that trap insects. These carnivorous plants represent flowers growing in nutrient-poor environments where capturing prey has become more valuable than relying on soil. The flowers of these plants are beautiful despite the plant's predatory nature. A sundew flower is delicate and pretty even as the rest of the plant functions like a trap. This juxtaposition, beauty and predation existing simultaneously, reminds us that nature isn't neatly categorized into nice and mean. Fact 90. Flowers that smell like animals. Some flowers have evolved to smell like specific animals. Monkey face orchids smell supposedly like monkey urine. Some flowers smell like male bees, releasing pheromones that attract female bees. Other flowers smell like mushrooms, attracting mushroom flies. This mimicry of animal smells represents flowers essentially hacking into animal sensory systems. Pollinators navigate the world by smell, using odor to find food, mates, and reproduction opportunities. Flowers that smell like these natural signals are essentially putting out false signals, attracting pollinators through sensory deception. It's a sophisticated evolutionary strategy. Why spend energy on producing true scent when you can trick your pollinator into visiting you? Fact 91. Flowers pollinated by small birds. Hummingbirds pollinate flowers, as mentioned before, but so do other small birds like sunbirds and honey eaters. These bird-pollinated flowers often have tubular shapes that fit the bird's beak. They're often bright red or orange, colors birds can see clearly. They produce abundant nectar to provide the high-energy food these active birds need. Bird-pollinated flowers typically produce little scent. Birds rely on vision more than smell. The shape of the flower is often critical. A wrong-shaped flower won't allow the bird's beak to fit properly, and the bird won't visit. These flowers are essentially specialized tools designed for specific pollinators, each detail of the flower shaped by millions of years of interaction with its preferred bird species. Fact 92. Flowers pollinated by bats. Bats pollinate flowers, and these flowers have specific characteristics. They often bloom at night when bats are active. They have pale or white coloring visible in darkness. They produce a musky or fruity smell, attractive to bats. They produce abundant nectar to satisfy the bat's energy needs. Some bat-pollinated flowers have spiky or brush-like centers that deposit pollen directly onto the bat's face. Bananas, mangoes, avocados, and other important food crops depend on bat pollination. The relationship between bats and flowers demonstrates that pollination isn't only about insects and plants. It's a complex web involving multiple animal groups. Fact 93. Flowers that attract beetles. Beetles were among the first insects to pollinate flowers, and their relationship with flowers goes back millions of years. Many primitive flowers are pollinated by beetles. These flowers often have simple, open structures that beetles can easily access. They often produce huge amounts of pollen, more than what's actually needed for reproduction, essentially feeding beetles while being pollinated. Beetle-pollinated flowers often have a greenish color, less visually striking than insect-pollinated flowers, but effective for attracting beetles. The relationship between beetles and flowers represents ancient partnership, one of the first evolutionary experiments in biotic pollination. Fact 94. Flowers pollinated by slugs and snails. Less commonly known is that some flowers are pollinated by slugs and snails. These flowers are often pale or dark-colored, visible to the mollusk's vision. They have a texture and positioning that makes them accessible to crawling creatures. They sometimes produce nectar on the outside of the flower where slugs and snails can access it. While these aren't efficient pollinators in terms of the number of flowers visited, they can be effective in isolated environments where higher energy pollinators aren't available. The existence of snail-pollinated flowers reminds us that pollination is a diverse phenomenon, and nature finds solutions adapted to local conditions. Fact 95. Flowers that bloom underground. Some flowers bloom while still underground or partially underground. Desert flowers may bloom beneath the soil surface, pollinated by insects that live in the soil. The flower essentially distributes its seeds through underground structures before producing an above-ground display. This underground blooming represents a strategy for protecting vulnerable reproductive structures from harsh desert conditions. Seeds can remain safe in the soil while being dispersed through underground pollination. Above ground, the plant might produce flowers visible to animal pollinators. These plants essentially have multiple flowering strategies, using different mechanisms in different environments to maximize reproductive success. Fact 96. The resurrection plant. Some flowers grow on resurrection plants, plants that can completely dry out and become dormant, then revive when water returns. These plants can survive in a completely desiccated state, all metabolic activity paused, and then resume life and reproduction when moisture becomes available. The flowers these plants produce may have been dried and preserved in the plant tissue for years, then suddenly bloom when conditions allow. This represents perhaps the ultimate in flower patience. Flowers that can wait years in a state of suspended animation until conditions favor blooming. It reminds us that life and growth operate on timescales we rarely perceive, that patience and persistence are written into the botanical world at fundamental levels. Section 7. Flowers in Healing and Medicine. Facts 97 to 110. Fact 97. Echinacea and immune support. Echinacea flowers, also known as coneflowers, have been used medicinally for centuries. Native Americans used echinacea to support various health functions. Modern research has identified compounds in echinacea that appear to support immune function. The flower contains polysaccharides and other compounds that may enhance immune response. Echinacea is now commonly used in herbal remedies to support health during cold season. The flower's use spans centuries and continents, suggesting that the health benefits observed by traditional healers have a basis in the flower's actual biochemistry. As you rest, imagine the quiet strength of echinacea, flowers supporting the body's innate wisdom in healing and protecting itself. Fact 98. Calendula and skin healing. Calendula flowers, also called marigolds, have been used traditionally to support skin healing. Modern studies have found compounds in calendula that may promote skin regeneration and healing. The flower has been used in salves, oils, and teas to support various skin conditions. Medieval healers used calendula for wounds. Modern herbalists continue this tradition, knowing that the flower contains compounds that support the skin's natural healing processes. The beauty of the flower, its warm golden orange color, seems to match its warming, healing nature. Calendula represents flowers working both as visual medicine and biochemical medicine. Fact 99. Chamomile and gentle rest. Chamomile flowers are famous for supporting relaxation and sleep. The flower contains compounds including apigenin that may interact with receptors involved in relaxation. Chamomile tea is a worldwide tradition, a gentle remedy for sleeplessness and tension. Children are given chamomile to help them sleep. Adults use it for relaxation and stress relief. The flower's use for rest spans centuries and appears in the traditions of numerous cultures, suggesting that the relaxing properties are both real and culturally reinforced. As you rest here, chamomile might be the perfect floral companion, its gentle nature supporting your drift towards sleep. Fact 100. Lavender and nervous system support. Lavender flowers contain compounds that appear to support nervous system relaxation. Linalool and linalool acetate, the primary aromatic compounds in lavender, seem to have calming effects on the nervous system. Lavender essential oil, flower tea, dried flowers, and lavender-infused products are used worldwide to support relaxation. The fragrance alone, through olfactory pathways, may trigger nervous system relaxation. Lavender represents the intersection of chemistry and psychology, a flower working through both its actual chemical composition and our cultural associations with its calming properties. Lavender embodies the healing power of flowers. Fact 101. Ginger flowers and digestion. Ginger flowers, which bloom before or after the ginger root is harvested, have been used to support digestive health. The compounds in ginger flowers may support comfortable digestion and nutrient absorption. Traditional medicine in Asia uses ginger flowers for various digestive purposes. Modern research is investigating the mechanisms by which ginger supports digestion. The ginger plant allocates energy to producing both roots, for storage and medicine, and flowers, for reproduction and additional medicine. The entire plant is useful, the flower contributing its own healing properties to the plant's total value. Fact 102. Hibiscus and cardiovascular health. Hibiscus flowers, beautiful and vibrant, have been traditionally used to support cardiovascular health. Studies suggest that hibiscus may support healthy blood pressure and circulation. The flower has been used in traditional medicine throughout the tropical and subtropical world. Hibiscus tea, made from the dried flowers, is consumed both for its health properties and its beautiful color. The flower's bright red or pink color seems to match its traditional use supporting heart health. In traditional Chinese medicine, hibiscus is associated with beauty and health, used both as a flower and as a tea. Fact 103. Rose petals and historical medicine. Rose petals have been used in medicine for thousands of years. Rose water has been used in traditional medicine and cosmetics. Rose petals have been used to support emotional well-being and women's health. Rosewater appears in medical texts from ancient Egypt, Persia, India, and China. The rose's value was so great that rose products were developed specifically for medicinal purposes. Roses have been cultivated not just for beauty and fragrance, but explicitly for their medicinal properties. Modern research is investigating compounds in roses that might support health, validating the traditional knowledge accumulated over millennia. Fact 104: St. John's wort and mood. St. John's wort flowers have been traditionally used to support mood and emotional well-being. Modern research has identified compounds in the flower that may influence neurotransmitter activity. The flower is often used as a supplement to support emotional balance. St. John's wort has been called the sunshine flower, and its association with supporting mood through difficult seasons is reflected in its traditional use and modern applications. The flower's golden color seems to match its warm, uplifting nature. St. John's wort represents flowers working at the intersection of body and mood, chemistry, and emotion. Fact 105: Dandelion flowers and whole plant medicine. Dandelion flowers are not just edible and nutritious, they're medicinally active. The flower, leaf, and root all have traditional medicinal uses. Dandelion supports the liver and digestive system. The flower is rich in antioxidants and nutrients. What humanity often considers a weed is actually a comprehensive herbal medicine, all parts of the plant offering healing properties. Dandelions represent the wild medicine available free in nature, a reminder that valuable healing isn't always found in cultivated gardens, but sometimes in the wild plants growing underfoot. Fact 106: Sunflower petals and traditional use. Sunflower petals and seeds have been used medicinally and nutritionally for centuries. The petals contain compounds that may support various health functions. Sunflower seeds are nutritious and contain oils used in traditional medicine. The entire sunflower plant is useful, roots, stems, leaves, flowers, and seeds all having been used medicinally. The sunflower's use spans cultures, from Native American traditions to European herbal medicine. The flower's association with following the sun seems reflected in its traditional use supporting energy and vitality. Fact 107: Medicinal flowers and modern research. Modern science is investigating traditional uses of medicinal flowers. Researchers are identifying specific compounds and measuring their biological effects. Some traditional uses are being validated, showing that ancient healers understood something true about these flowers. Other traditional uses are being refined or clarified as research illuminates mechanisms. The dialogue between traditional knowledge and modern science is creating a more complete understanding of flowers' medicinal properties. As new compounds are discovered in flowers, new potential uses are identified. Flowers may hold secrets yet to be revealed, medicines for conditions not yet treated. Fact 108: The caution around self-medicating. While many flowers have medicinal properties, self-medicating requires caution. Some flowers are toxic or can interact with medications. Some medicinal flowers have contraindications. They shouldn't be used by people with certain conditions. Professional guidance is important before using flowers for medicine. Some traditional uses are validated by modern research, while others remain unproven or are actively harmful. The fact that a flower has been used medicinally traditionally doesn't automatically make it safe or effective. Flowers represent power, and that power, like all power, requires respect and careful use. Fact 109: The psychology of flowers and healing. Beyond their chemical properties, flowers support healing through psychological mechanisms. The beauty of flowers supports mental health. The act of tending flowers supports emotional well-being. The fragrance of flowers triggers positive emotional states. Being in environments with flowers supports recovery from illness. Hospitals increasingly recognize the value of flowers and plants in supporting patient recovery. The flower's healing is thus multifold. Chemical compounds in the flowers themselves, the visual beauty of the blooms, the fragrance they produce, the act of engaging with them. Flowers represent integrated healing, addressing the whole person, not just specific symptoms. Fact 110: The future of floral medicine. As traditional herbal medicine is revisited through modern scientific lens, flowers are being rediscovered as sources of health and healing. researchers are investigating compounds in flowers that might address modern health challenges. Some flowers used for centuries are being validated as effective for their traditional purposes. Others are being discovered to have new applications. The future of medicine might include more recognition of flowers' medicinal properties. As pharmaceutical approaches face limitations, botanical medicine represents another pathway to health. Flowers, which have supported human health for thousands of years, might increasingly be recognized as crucial to human healing in coming years. Closing reflection and gentle fared words. And so, our gentle journey through 100 remarkable facts about flowers draws to its quiet close. We've wandered together through histories and mysteries, through colors and fragrances, through the intricate relationships between flowers and the creatures that depend on them. We've explored flowers blooming in impossible places, flowers that trick and deceive and heal and nourish. We've touched on thousands of years of human relationship with flowers, how they've inspired us, sustained us, carried our hopes and dreams. Think of what we've touched tonight. The massive rafflesia and the invisible duckweed, the roses adored for millennia and the ghost orchids known only to a few, the flowers that bloom for hours and those that bloom only at night, flowers in gardens and flowers in rainforests, flowers in deserts and flowers beneath the ice, flowers that smell sweet and flowers that stink, flowers that heal and flowers that deceive, flowers that move and flowers that wait in suspended animation for years. All of this, all of it, part of the same beautiful, strange, diverse phenomenon called flowering plants. And through it all, a single thread remains constant. Flowers exist to reproduce, to spread their genetic material, to create new life. Yet in pursuing this purely biological imperative, flowers have created beauty of almost incomprehensible depth. They've created colors that don't technically exist, iridescence that seems impossible. They've created fragrances so complex they contain hundreds of compounds. They've created shapes that mimic animals, flowers that think and calculate and communicate. The pursuit of reproduction has led, as a side effect, to the creation of some of the most beautiful things in existence. And you, right now, are part of this story. The same elements that form flowers form you. The carbon in a rose petal is cousin to the carbon in your cells. The water that flows through a sunflower stem flows through your veins. You're made of the same stardust, the same ancient elements as every flower that's ever bloomed. In this way, flowers aren't separate from you. They're family, fellow travelers on this strange planet, fellow expressions of life itself. As you lie here now, letting sleep carry you deeper, remember that even as you rest, flowers are blooming somewhere. At this very moment, in the night, in gardens around the world, flowers are opening their petals. Moonflowers are unfolding into the darkness. Jasmine is releasing its fragrance into the evening air. Somewhere, a pollinator is arriving at a bloom, finding the nectar it seeks. The world of flowers never stops. It's always blooming, always growing, always renewing itself. Perhaps some of these flower facts have lingered with you, settling into memory like pollen on a bee's body. Or perhaps they've already dissolved into the soft haze of rest, useful not for being remembered but for carrying your mind toward sleep. Both are fine. The beauty of drifting off to information is that you don't need to hold on to every detail. The mystery remains. The wonder remains. The flowers remain, blooming quietly, waiting for tomorrow's light and the next visitor seeking what they have to offer. If you happen to still be awake, you can go ahead and watch another video when you're ready. There are always more stories to drift off to, more mysteries to explore in that gentle space between waking and sleeping. But for now, if your eyes are heavy and your body is beginning to feel truly relaxed, there's nothing left to do. No facts left to learn tonight, no mysteries left to solve. Just the calm certainty that flowers will continue blooming, that beauty persists, that growth and renewal are written into the very fabric of the natural world. Sleep well, and may your dreams be gentle. May they be filled with gardens and blooms, with colors and fragrances, with the quiet wonder that flowers offer to those who pause to truly see them. And when you wake tomorrow, perhaps take a moment to notice any flowers around you, whether in a garden or a crack in the pavement. Remember that you're looking at millions of years of evolution, at complex chemistry and intricate biology, at nature's persistent pursuit of beauty. Thank you for spending this time here, drifting through the world of flowers with me. Thank you for the calm presence you've brought to this journey. Good night, and may you rest as peacefully as a flower resting between blooms. The world continues its beautiful work, and you rest knowing you're part of something vast and beautiful and ancient. Sleep now. The flowers will bloom tomorrow, just as they have for millions of years. And so, dear friend, drift gently into rest. Good night.